Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the JKWD podcast, where we've already released one in 2021, but this is the first one we've recorded in 2021. It's a new year or something, just a flip of the calendar. Kelvin, how you doing today?
I'm doing fine, sir. Doing fine. Sitting here, loving life, happy and healthy, not buried under snow. Life is good.
Good. Yeah, it's funny seeing you sitting there in another living room. I never know what room I'm getting when I dial in. Somehow you always manage to have the microphone and the chair in the same place.
I'm visually mobile. Really, there's just a big old room here, so the chair stays here, but the room rotates around so I can have a different view. New technology. I'll buy something else later. So how's things going with you?
Good. The year
on this first Saturday in 2021, or I guess it's Friday today. Forget that.
Yeah, today's the second Friday of 2021.
Well, New Year's Day. I mean, that doesn't really count because that's New Year's Day. This is like a week later when it's like really in the year. See, that first day was just a party. They call it the first. They partied it, and then we had fun.
Okay. Me, I went to bed early New Year's Eve. I didn't wait up. I didn't wait up to make sure we were going to make it into the new year.
There you go. You'd hate some rest. Wake up the next morning and go, crap! It's still 2020. How'd that happen? Yeah. But things are good. I don't have any as I tend to say, there's nothing wrong in my life that's not my fault, right?
There you go.
Right now, so.
There you go. The first week of the year was fairly eventful. Even outside of U.S. politics, we had a couple of UFOs crash in Hawaii supposedly, and
I didn't see that.
There's they think they saw a new craft under a hangar in Area 51. So it's starting off to be
there's stuff I'm not catching up with. I mentioned that Area 51 thing.
This might be the year the aliens make themselves known. We'll see.
Well, if they were watching what else was happening in this week, they'd probably think it's
time to intervene.
Oh my goodness, it's been a week.
We're brought to you today by Vitamin K Daily. Philosophical supplements for your attitude, health. I almost made it.
Good.
Wake up every day, Monday through Friday. Get your daily dose of positive from the Prince of Positive himself, Kelvin P. Wrinkled Sr. Start your day off with a box full of awesome. Get 4 weeks free now by going to vitaminkdaily.com. Sign yourself up. After that, just $24.95 a year. If it turns out it's not for you, just cancel anytime during your 4-week trial, and you will not be charged.
Correct.
1 red cent. vitaminkdaily.com. Hey, we have a guest on the podcast today, and this was a really interesting conversation. His name's Matthew Ferry. He's author of Quiet Mind, Epic Life. He grew up in wealthy circumstances and thought that wealth would mean happiness, and he turns out, guess what? Nope. So he set about trying to figure out how to build an epic life, and he found the Quiet Mind was the right way. And we talk a lot about a lot of stuff in this podcast.
We do. Excellent.
Wide ranging, all over the place. Yep.
Yeah. Even kept me quiet for a while because I was just listening to what he had to say. And, shutting me up is a chore. So, yeah, I predict they will enjoy this podcast a lot.
Yeah. So give it a listen. And as always, we have show notes and more at jkwdpodcast.com, including everything that Matthew talks about, his app and the 30-day no opinion challenge and all that kind of stuff. and how to get his book as well. And we will play the music on the other side of that. You'll hear our conversation with Matthew Ferry.
Kelvin World Domination Podcast, where we talk about better humanhood and teach you how to dominate your world. You ready? Here we go.
Well, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thanks.
Before we go too far into the story, let's just have you introduce yourself to our audience and your mission, and let us know why that's your mission.
Oh, awesome. Okay, great. My name is Matthew Ferry, and I am a spiritual teacher, a songwriter, producer, and author of best-selling book, Quiet Mind, Epic Life. And my mission is very simply to assist people in getting their mind to go quiet so that they can live an epic life. And that's my mission because from an early age, I was plagued by the anxieties and negativity in my own mind. And very early on, I decided that I was going to figure this out and do something about it. And ultimately, I created a process by which I could myself come to a state of peace, and then taught other people to do it. And my mission is just to expand that as far as I can.
You said early on, are we talking 7, 8 years old, or early
actually
adulthood?
9 years old.
9 years old, okay.
9 years old. Yeah, I was having these crazy moments. So I had asthma when I was a kid, and my mom used to make this. And my parents divorced when I was 8, and my mom used to make these sort of little asthma tents. So I would sleep under the kitchen table, and she would tent the whole table and put a humidifier under there and a little light. And I would read books before I went to bed. And, the hum of the humidifier and the dim light and reading would put me into these trance-like states. And I had these experiences where I felt like I was leaving my body, like I was floating up. I don't know if I was, but that was what I felt like. And the bliss and the peace was so profound, was so intense that when I would go back into my body, I would literally break down and start crying. I wanted to get back there. And that drove me. I mean, very early on in my life, I started to think to myself, like, how do I get back there? I would try drugs, I would try sex. I was in bands, so I was trying to be a rock star. I was trying to be adored. I mean, then I went into business. I made all this money, and I tried everything possible to get back to that bliss and that peace. And it turns out there's nothing out there that makes it happen. It's all a contextual framework, and that took me into my mid-30s before that really started to gel for me, where I realized, oh, wow, it's all me. I don't need ayahuasca. I don't need meditation. I don't need any of the things that my teachers told me that would work. In the end, they were just temporary.
What you really needed was a sheet, a kitchen table, and a humidifier.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, in the end, what I really needed was a perspective that acknowledged that all is well, and that anything that implied that all wasn't well was just an opinion. And it turned out that opinions are the source of all suffering.
Yeah, we're both. I think we're both in agreement there. We've been through some courses that include a no opinion week.
An opinion purge.
Yeah.
And listen, right now, opinions are the name of the game. And with social media, while social media is a phenomenal tool, it's still in its infancy, and it has brought out the worst of our survival state, and pride, pretending like you know, giving your opinion on things that you don't have any idea about, you don't actually have any, there's no merit in your opinion. Those kinds of things, while they are phenomenal for giving you just a momentary hit of chemicals in your body, the long-term effect, of course, creates stress and anxiety and conflict and strife. So I wrote a blog post called "Going on a 30-Day Opinion Diet." People should check that out.
Ours wasn't 30 days. We were just a week, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yes, but we had to start over if we give an opinion. So sometimes
the
it won't be 30 days.
If you are not a recognized world expert on the subject, you have no opinion on it. And if you are, you don't get to give it that week.
Which is not easy. Right?
No, it really
themselves, those are survival strategies. So opinion, if you look back on the evolution of our species, like being able to develop a hypothesis and then play it out and share it with others, actually has done tremendous good for our world. But we're in a world now where, the vast majority of people living in the first world countries are going to die because of what they eat and because of stress, right? It's heart attack and cancer. It's going to kill almost everybody. And even if you try to kill yourself, you're probably going to have a whole bunch of other people intervene. Like, even that's hard to do. Killing yourself is hard to do. Yet the opinions that we are giving are constantly about trying to save the world and make it better and prove that I'm right and show you that I know what I'm doing, so that you give me some kind of esteem, so that I get favor, so that I can then survive longer.
We are in the middle of, we're recording this about 9 months into the 2020, now 2021 coronavirus quarantines. I know all of us are in different places, so we've had various different experiences of things being open and people going out, but we've never had, in my lifetime anyway, a time where there's more opportunity for quiet. We're all just stay home. Most of our work is being done online. We're having this conversation on Zoom, which even if we were in the same city, we probably would be doing anyway, because that's what they tell us to do. And yet it seems like there's never been more noise around. How do we choose to just ignore that noise and throw those opinions out and let some of the quiet come in and head toward that epic life that you write about?
I think it's a phenomenal question and a quest that many of us are actually on. We're on the quest for finding the peace and the joy and the flow in the middle of the chaos and the disasters and the sort of the wrecking ball that has run through our society today. It's going to start with, one, acknowledging that your opinion is the source of your suffering, and that the mind, which I call the drunk monkey in your head, has an opinion on everything, including things it knows nothing about, and that's a survival strategy. And if you can start to say to yourself, my mind is not my friend. This drunk monkey in my head, it's not on my side. In fact, most of the time, it doesn't even like me. Who else calls you fat or stupid or that was dumb, right? Who else makes fun of you? Right? If people make fun of you, they're not going to be your friends, and yet you listen to the drunk monkey in your head like it is your friend. So you step back and you say, oh, wow, the drunk monkey is a survival tool for human beings, and I'm going to play a game called listen to it like it's a biological mechanism, rather than listen to it like it's me, or listen to it like I'm talking to myself. You're not talking to yourself. You can't get the thing to shut up. If you say, hey, I don't want to think for the next 15 minutes, your mind was like, that's great, but what about all these 94 things that I want to be thinking about? You discover that your mind doesn't care about you. It doesn't care what you want. And that is so profound. That makes such a huge difference when you recognize your mind is not your friend. That drunk monkey in your head doesn't care what you want. That idea alone starts to open up this framework for you going into more peace with how things are.
Talk a little bit about the framework, since we set off on that path there.
Yeah, so the framework is something that I have called the rapid enlightenment process. And it's a proven 4-step process to get your mind to quiet down. So you stop getting so worried and stressed out. You can focus on the things that are important to you. You can take action on the items that matter. You're no longer paralyzed by the insanity. And there's 4 steps to it. So step 1 is what I just said. You want to be aware of the drunk monkey in your head. The drunk monkey actually has 6 modes that it operates in. I call them unconscious reflexes. Wow. And by naming the drunk monkey and naming its reflexes, it actually helps you to disassociate from it. So that's number 1. Step 2 is something, and I would say that if we're being honest, that first step would be essentially an aspect of mindfulness. So I want to nod to that. I think that that's really, really valuable, mindfulness. But I did mindfulness. I went to Tibet. I meditated for 17 straight days. I had the awakening. My mind went quiet. I came home and my mind went bananas again. And that was in 2006. And it took years to understand how is it that I can be aware of my mind, but it still talks. It still bothers me. It still stresses me out. And it was an insight. And that insight is really step 2. And the insight is that there are motives. The drunk monkey has a motive to talk, to judge, to mentally beat you up. And I call those the 10 hidden motives to survive. So it's greed, grudge, hatred, victim, illogical rules, humble, traitor, pride, resistance, and lazy. Those are phenomenal evolutionary advantages that we have developed as a species over time. But when you see that pride is running, suddenly you can choose something else. But if you don't see that pride is running, you just give your opinion, give your opinion, give your opinion, give your opinion, get all dressed up, look good, try to impress all the people who aren't looking at you. Hatred. Go ahead.
Oh no, I just love that line right there. Try to impress all the people who weren't looking at you. That was good. That hit my funny bone right there.
and that is one of the indicators of your mind going quiet. You literally start laughing and giggling about everything because life itself begins to feel absurd. So step 1, you got to see the drunk monkey and its 6 unconscious reflexes. Step 2, you start to discern that the drunk monkey has a motivation. If you remove the drunk monkey's motivation, then there's no need for it to talk. So your mind talks when there is some implied threat, period. Now, there is intuition and there is creativity, and that you get these downloads when your mind goes quiet. It's like there's this profound state of resourcefulness and insight. But that's very different than just the chatter. Step 3 is to use something called enlightened perspectives. And enlightened perspectives are real simple. They just assume that all is well. And I stumbled upon these sort of accidentally. I was studying a man named Dr. David Hawkins, who wrote a book called Power versus Force. And he implemented a research study utilizing applied kinesiology, muscle testing. And he was muscle testing statements, basically, and then applying them to a scale from 1 to 1,000. And in that process of learning muscle testing, which was a profound pain, by the way, took me 20 years to really get some mastery around it, I began to discern that statements that implied that all is well fundamentally strengthened the body. And statements that implied that something was wrong or something needed to be fixed or something needs to change fundamentally weakened the body. So when you are reflecting on your life and you think, I need to change that, you actually weaken yourself. And when you weaken yourself, you put yourself into a survival state. And when you put yourself into a survival state, here comes the drunk monkey. He's like, I need to fix it. Let me do something about that. So aligning with these enlightened perspectives is mind-blowing. This is why ultimately I coined the phrase rapid enlightenment, because prior to that, the possibility of a person going into an enlightened state appeared to be, like if we're looking at the Buddhist or Hindu traditions, then we would say, wow, it's like, 1 in a million, and it might take you lifetimes to get there. And I just thought to myself, why and how? And I've always thought of myself as a spiritual hooligan. And I have like a deep belief that all rules are lies. But I go about trying to figure out what those rules are by doing them 100%. Like, all right, I'm going to follow this rule 100% and see what happens. And just putting it to the test. And so many of the traditional things that we've been taught, I haven't been able to prove out of myself or the thousands of people that I've coached. So enlightened perspectives, that's number 3. And then number 4 is actually a process called recontextualization. And that's very simply taking the input of your life and then recontextualize it. Essentially, it's the skill of shifting your context, your perspective, and doing it in such a way that the way you describe it creates the implied all is well and strengthens you, empowers you. So recontextualization is just a skill that you use because, like we were saying before we started the recording, or maybe you started the recording back then, I don't know, that I was raised by a man who was exceptionally success driven. I was raised in a way where, we had we had the Mercedes, we had the flew around in the private jet, we had the later in life, the Rolls Royces and I was in this zone of like abundance. And what came along with that were a tremendous amount of dogmatic ways of thinking, prideful ways of thinking that turned out to be very weakening. Mm-hmm. They weakened me and anybody actually who thinks about them in that way. And so practicing these recontextualization processes helped me to essentially, let's call it reframe things in a way that created more peace and more flow. Acknowledge that all is well. So those are the 4 steps of the methodology I talk about in my book, Quiet Mind, Epic Life.
By the way, I'm going to buy that.
No, I'm going to send you one.
Cancel.
You're going to send me your address at the end, and I'm going to send you guys one.
Awesome. Thank you. I have, I've been spending a lot of time, I won't say a lot of time trying to do that, doing the mindfulness thing. A couple of books I've read that actually made a difference, talking about the voice of the subconscious mind, having its own mind, not necessarily having anything to do with what you want to do. And in that process of listening, one of the comments was, as soon as you are able to observe the workings of your mind as you would the antics of a small child, you're getting a handle on it.
Completely agree.
So, I've had times to the extent that I have practiced that, I mean, I've had times when I hear old what'd you call him? Drunk monkey. I hear drunk monkey having a good time, and I just tell him to just shut up. Sometimes that works, and then sometimes he gets sneaky.
He is a sneaky little bastard, for sure.
So this is I mean, I'm locked in on this. This is right where.
Well, Kelvin, I pet my head a lot. Oh, drunk monkey. I pet my head. I know. You're so scared. I relate to the talking in my head more like a pet.
Right.
And I operate, like you think about a little dog, right? Little dogs are just yipping and barking and constantly threatened. And for decades, that is what my mind was. Mm-hmm. Now, my mind is mostly quiet now. I'd say 95% of the time. I don't really have any thinking in my head that isn't something that I have like summoned or said, okay, now I'm going to focus on this particular thing, and we're going to utilize the mechanism to my advantage. But that took a long time to get there, and I really have worked diligently to shorten the process. I think I have an advantage over most people who are in my industry, and that advantage is that I've been accountable. I've been accountable for producing results. I've been working on Wall Street since 2003. Prior to that, I was working in my family business, which was real estate agent training. Mm-hmm. And so 1993, I started coaching people on the phone. And my job was essentially to help them to get results. Now, back then, I was teaching them business. Mm-hmm. But slowly but surely, I started to realize, my God, the mind is really getting in the way here. I'm telling you what to do, then you're not doing it. What is happening here? And, of course, it took my side project, which was me working on my own personal anxieties and fears and doubts and concerns and negativity. That's what I was working on personally in the background. And it started to move it to the foreground. And I started to assist people in getting their fears and their doubts and their concerns to quiet down so that they could actually do the things that they knew would produce the results that they wanted. That was my training ground. And so ultimately, everything that I do becomes systematic. So and it's not systematic like hopefully it'll work. It's not conjecture. It's not maybe it'll work. It's like, no, this is what works, and I get paid to make sure that it does. And I think that sort of accidental luck is going to make a big difference in the world as I continue to expand and get this methodology out there to people. Like people are going to, pretty much anybody can take on this very simple system and get their mind to go quiet. And, I've proven it over and over and over and over and over to myself. Next is the science. That's going to be done inside of the Center for Rapid Enlightenment, which is our 501c3 that we'll be launching in the next couple years.
I was going to ask you about a little science. All the stuff that's coming out on, neuroscience and what the brain does and the amygdala and all this other stuff. How does that play into your knowledge, your teaching, and your methodology?
It's a great question. I'm going to speak to you using potentially scientific terms, but I request that you do not listen to me like I'm a scientist at all. I'm a practitioner, right? Like I'm a guy who's accountable for getting results, and that's it. Mm-hmm. And how I get results has not been scientifically documented or demonstrated just yet. And I'm eager to do that. In fact, I got a card sitting right here in front of me from a scientist that we have engaged who is going to conduct our first study. Awesome. But then the pandemic hit and delayed our efforts. So we're engaged in that. But let's go back to this idea of the amygdala. I don't know exactly how it plays in, but here's what I will tell you. Utilizing the applied kinesiology, muscle testing, and it's very simple. For our listener, it's like this. You make a statement, and then your buddy pushes down on your arm. So you put your arm out like this, you make a statement, your buddy pushes down on your arm either stays strong or you can't keep it up, the muscle fails and it goes weak. It's so unbelievably simple. And we don't know what it means per se, other than there are certain ideas that create weakness in the body, and there are certain ideas that create strength in the body. And one of the things that we have, and when I say we, I have about 40 students who are really into this, that we all collaborate. We've been developing the methodology together, essentially. And what we've seen is that sometimes the testing doesn't actually work. And what we have discerned over time is that the testing doesn't work when somebody is in a threatened survival state. I think that that's going to be the amygdala is somehow activated. And when it is activated, everything is strong. So if you're a guy, everything's strong. Or you're just like, I'm going to power through this and make sure that I don't get hurt, right? And for females, generally, right? So it's not, I'm speaking in general terms here. Sometimes it's the opposite. Females, generally, everything is weak. Everything is weak. Positive statements, negative statements, uplifting statements, terrible everything's weak. And what we have seen is that person then needs to step back, get themselves back into a peaceful, all is well state. And then when they are back in a state where they recognize that all is well, then their testing works again. And we assume at this moment, because we have not done any science on it, we assume at this moment that is related in some way to the activation or the deactivation of those stress hormones, those survival states that get activated in the body, aka the amygdala.
What I found, it's been a while since I tried the applied kinesiology.
Yeah, we can call it muscle testing.
No, we had that too. I like to sound smart, So the applied kinesiology.
Applied kinesiology.
What does that mean? Yeah. It's muscle testing. What I tried that on myself. What you just told me was I can't do that to myself.
You can, but that takes way more practice.
Yeah, because it's like, oh, well, I know I'm supposed to be testing it, so it's going to stay where I put it. So this is going to be true. So I kind of fake myself out and null and void it.
It'll take you a year, Kelvin. It'll take you a year. I have a training that I do specifically on that because I would like to have more people in our tribe basically putting everything to the test and calling BS on anything that we do. Like the number one goal that I have is to prove that what I'm saying is wrong. And so I like to surround myself with people who are committed to investigating and being curious and discovering. And so I have a training called the Muscle Testing School that we do that teaches people how to muscle test on themselves. But brother, man, does it take some commitment, and it probably take you a year or so to feel confident. Whereas, like if you and I did testing together, and I came over and was pushing on your arm, probably within about an hour or so, we could start to get some consistency in the readings that we were getting on your arm.
Oh wow! So it even takes a while to calibrate it.
Yeah, like I have an intention to muscle test on Oprah's arm and on Joe Rogan's arm. Those are two people that I would like to do some testing on and show them that there are statements that they're currently thinking that weaken them and statements that they're currently thinking that strengthen them, and show them that the statements that they're thinking that strengthen them imply that all is well. I want them to understand and see on their own arm these enlightened perspectives. That said, I'm probably going to have to work with them for about an hour before I even do the interview to get their testing to be working. That's what I say.
Wow. Okay.
Things that make you go,
That's pretty cool. You bringing back stuff.
I'm 20 years into this process. You know what I mean? Excellent. It's like taking a long time.
Well, you look like you're like 19, so cut it out.
Woohoo! Well, I like that. I'm 53 years old. And like I said, this journey to be at peace started when I was about 9, and then my journey to be successful and live an epic life started when I began to work for the family business at 21, and somewhere around 2003 they really started to converge, where I saw, oh wow, if you have a quiet mind, for some people, because some people are interested in that, a lot of people aren't. If you have a quiet mind, it's actually easier to do the tasks necessary to create an epic life. Mm-hmm. And if your mind is chatty, then it's actually way more difficult to do the tasks necessary to live an epic life. And, living an epic life is skill, system, discipline, procedure, process, it's being an effective communicator, blah, 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 right? It's like, go back to my lineage. So my father was my mentor. My father's mentor was a man named Earl Nightingale. Mm-hmm. And Earl Nightingale's mentor was a man named Napoleon Hill. So like my lineage comes from that sort of success motivation background. And so putting these two things together, the spirituality in a non-woo-woo fashion, mm-hmm. with the success principles, I think that's I think it's an interesting way to live.
Yeah, I mean, Josh and I went through the one program, the MKMMA, Master Key Mastermind Alliance, which Charles Hanel was the thing for there, and we learned in that basically that they do go together, and the natural laws affect everything else, and if we ignore them or we don't know them, that they don't work for us. Josh. And I'm one of those not quite woo woo guys. Josh is very practical and stuff, so he and I balance each other off very well. Because if I'm out on a cloud, he'll like make it rain.
He's got a lasso. He's pulling you back in.
Yeah. He's good for me that way.
Or I'm just like, hey, watch out for gravity. Just while you're up there, just know that's it's a possibility. That's why I'm down here.
and that's it. So that was good teaching, but and they brought us into a lot of stuff. But the stuff that you have here, I mean, this is like I have to read this book now because
I can't wait. It
speaks to all the stuff. Because I'm a life coach also, and so it speaks to all the stuff I want to teach, and some of it I know it to be true. I'm Think and Grow Rich. I'm all those guys.
Oh yeah.
But somewhere in there gets to be a little friction. I believe it. I do it. I teach it. It works for the people I teach it to.
Yeah.
And then,
but it also works for the people that you and I teach it to because they're predisposed to it. And so when my mentors of the past, I think, working for my father, basically I was being like I was drinking from the fire hose, and I think over about a 15-year period, I read or studied or mentored under or went to workshops or consulted by about 160 different teachers, and I thought of myself as like the crash test dummy of enlightenment. So I was like, I'm going to put this to the test and see if it actually works. Mm-hmm. And I was pretty shocked. I mean, it was a little bit of a heartache to discover how much of the personal development industry was actually meant to hook me or sell me or fascinate me, but didn't actually produce the result. It was more like a copywriter discovered, oh wow, if I say it like this, then people will buy it. Mm-hmm. And then the crazy thing is that then other teachers and coaches and authors like took that same information and they like brought it into their own method, never really putting it to the test. And for me, it really was about like, if it works, then I get paid. And if it doesn't work, I don't get paid. And the people that I was working with, especially when I moved into Wall Street, their level of skepticism and discernment was higher versus a real estate agent, right? A real estate agent is a much more open person typically. Whereas on Wall Street, this is a much more university education-based person. And here I was coming with these ideas that were not scientifically proven. And it had to work, period. Had to work because they were paying me a lot of money.
So we've talked a lot about quiet mind. Let's move to the other part there, epic life. How do you define epic life? And for people who can't envision their own epic life but think it sounds good, how do you set them on a path of finding theirs?
I think that's a phenomenal question. I do a process. In fact, I would encourage our listener to go and download my free app on their Apple or their Google operating system on their phone. And in there's a section of all my webinars. So I do a webinar every month for my broader community as my gift and service to the community. And we just did a process called enlightened goal setting. And so that's in the app for them to go through. But the high level of enlightened goal setting is this recognition that typical goal setting implies that something's wrong, something's broken, it needs to be fixed, it should be better, it could be better. And the moment you go into that framework, that idea, it should be better, it could be better, blah, 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 blah. The moment you go into that idea is the moment that you now activate a survival framework. And what I found after being a guy who helped people to design their goals, their objectives, their dreams, their business plans. I've been doing it since 1993. As a guy who's been doing it for a long time, what I found is that most people end up on what I call the treadmill from hell. They set some kind of goal the same way. I'm going to lose weight, and I'm going to retire, and I'm going to have better relationships. It's like the same goal over and over and over and over, and they're just kind of inching along, never really having what I call the quantum leap. And the quantum leap actually begins to occur when you step back and you discern what is the criteria by which you think success would actually happen. And it turns out that the criteria has nothing to do with the results. The criteria has to do with the experience. So I utilize a series of questions that I learned in my NLP days called criteria questions. And the question is just what's important about. So, Josh, I would start by having them say, all right, 2021, what's the most important thing that you want to achieve that you think would create an epic life for you? And they would tell me what it is. And, I had a client, for example, recently who wanted to create wellness retreats. What's important about the wellness retreats? And she said, well, it's made such a difference for me. And, I really got so much value out of finally taking care of myself that I want to share that with other people. Awesome. Then you keep going. What's important about that? And then oftentimes they say, what do you mean? And you say, well, what's important about helping other people see the value in taking care of yourself? And then they say something like, they'll go chunk up another level. Well, gosh, I think that it's so valuable to recognize that if you feel good, that you can do better in your life. And I was like, okay, that's great. Now you go to the highest level. Ultimately, you have taught people that it feels good to take care of yourself, that you'll do better because you've taken care of yourself. Ultimately, you took care of yourself. It felt great. You wanted to share it with the world. You've now created that. Ultimately, what does all of that do for you? And when you get to that question, most people come to some kind of value statement. I'll just be happy. I'll be inspired. I don't know. I'll feel good. I'll feel peaceful. There's some kind of experiential term. Then the key is to look into your life and say, okay, well, where is that already happening? Because what you'll find is that you don't actually need to change anything. Mm-hmm. That the thing that you want is already here. And the thing that you want is an internal experience. It's a contextual framework. And if you begin to apply your goal now, let's say your goal is to be at peace. If you say, all right, well, how do I be at peace with money? How do I be at peace with my relationship? How do I be at peace with my body? How do I be at peace with my family? If you just start to apply that now to all of the things that you would normally say, I want to change, suddenly you have this incredible set of quantum leaps occur because you're relating to it like, I'm going to produce the result that I really want rather than I'm going to change the world so that hopefully it changes how I feel. And when you come at your life from that perspective, there's a tremendous acceleration. And the reason being is you give up probably 70% of your goals. Like 70% of your goals, you're like, that's BS. Why was I even going after that? And you hone in on the ones that are actually meaningful to you. So you're able to focus. Then because you have worked on quieting your mind, you're not resisting that you really suck at a whole bunch of stuff. And that because you suck at it, you could learn to not suck. And that learning to not suck is a long, arduous, hardcore process. And because you are in a state of non-resistance, you can go through that long, hardcore process and come out the other side being effective in some new area. Mm-hmm. That was a little complex, but there you go.
Oh, I was good with that.
Yeah, me too. And
I was good with that.
I'm maybe this comes from our Trading in the Master Key program, but we were taught to identify what they called personal pivotal needs, and what it really drills down to is what's important to you, and then if your goals aren't serving the things that are fundamentally important to you, why are they your goals? Get rid of them, and find new goals, right? So that makes perfect sense with the drill down method that you were talking about. Start with, why is that your goal? If it turns out it's not important to you, maybe you got to find another goal. But if it is, let's really get you the skills to get there. And if you're really motivated to do that because it's meaningful to you, then you won't have any problem acquiring those skills. It'll just take the time that it takes to acquire them.
And then there's a whole set of practices that you do along the way where you begin to discern that the drunk monkey takes your goal and says, when that goal happens, life will be better. Therefore, life sucks now. And now you are experiencing some sort of fret, some anxiety, some frustration, upset. You begin to apply arbitrary standards and rules to yourself that fundamentally turn you into a victim. And they turn you into a substandard human being, even though none of that is true and the whole thing is a figment of your imagination. But the drunk monkey's job is to, quote, motivate you, provide you with a motive for action. And the rapid enlightenment process is about transcending the drunk monkey, transcending the thinking so that you enter into a place of inspiration, which is essentially being filled with the Spirit to do something. And when you are filled with the Spirit to do something, you're unstoppable. And you fail, boom, succeed, right? Because that's what success is. Success is a series of well-managed breakdowns and failures.
Mm-hmm. So what's your view of what we call the law of attraction?
Well, I'm third generation. We, really fourth generation. We did hear a little bit about it in Think and Grow Rich. But my father's mentor, Earl Nightingale, his best-selling album, right, LP, first best-selling spoken word album in history.
Yep.
The punchline was you become what you think about.
Right.
And then I was insatiable with Jerry and Esther Hicks back in the 90s when they first started to.
I still got a little bit of them.
I think that their idea set is just phenomenal. As I implemented the ideas of the law of attraction into my own life and really encouraged and worked with my clients like on hand-to-hand combat every single day, day in and day out, to have them apply the law of attraction in their own life, I began to have an insight. And the insight is that we're all one thing expressing itself with infinite variety. And that the idea that I had an idea and now I'm going to, pull it to me turns out to be an illusion. That I am the idea expressing itself. And that the idea is an iteration in consciousness, and that consciousness is some sort of oscillation that is occurring, and that as that oscillation occurs, there are these anomalies. It spits. It's sort of like a fractal. And as the fractal, the information comes into the front of the equation and spits out the back, it goes right back into the front again, and it iterates. And what I've found is that if you begin to transcend the idea that you are the creator, but instead you are being created, your ability to invest your mental, emotional, spiritual energy into the ideas that are coming through is much more pure. Because it isn't necessarily about you and your capability. Mm-hmm. It is that I am an aspect of creation, creating. And in that, which by the way, if you muscle test the law of attraction, most of the aspects of it cause you to go weak. Which was very disheartening, by the way, when I first stumbled across that. Extremely disheartening. But then it had me start to say, well, then what would be a more strengthening way to think about it? Not because strong is better and weak is worse, but more like in physical structures, a strengthening structure functions and a weakened structure malfunctions. So how do I get to a functioning state with this set of ideas? And ultimately it was surrendering to, I am the idea expressing itself. And the more I align myself with those ideas, the more empowered I become. It's just the next iteration, right? So I'm standing on Jerry and Esther's shoulders, and with deep and profound respect for the methodology that they brought, and if we're being honest, that methodology of the law of attraction has pulled millions of people out of apathy and powerlessness and put them squarely into a state of being responsible
being a creator,
for themselves, and
absolutely,
I applaud that. Yes.
Well, thank you for not making me rethink that one, buddy. I'll tell you.
Yes.
Really, seriously, because it did a lot for me.
Me too.
sometimes when you get somewhere and it's working for you and you change, you probably cover that in your book someplace. If it's working for you when you stop doing it, you're short-circuiting yourself in that way. You've got something in Quiet Mind, Epic Life that explains that, right?
Help me understand what you mean, because I felt like there might have been two concepts that I understood there. So just clarify it for me.
Well, you may be doing something and being successful to all your definitions of being successful. And then for some reason, you change what you're doing and you either take a break and fall back from that. I mean, I know a lot of people, including myself, who have been doing phenomenally in an area or two, and then all of a sudden we're not doing that anymore. Yes. So what the success was before, even though we may have loved it, is no longer, we're doing something else that is just really not doing that. So how do you
there's a couple things so really what we're talking about here is the contextual framework. Well, what's the context that I will hold that gives me power in the situation? And one context that is so important is that this too shall pass, that everything will be transcended, 100% of all things. There was a time when I was meditating for 4 hours a day, and I was experiencing so much ecstasy, so much bliss, that I felt like I was riding a roller coaster and doing the best drugs in the world and having sex and eating cake and ice cream. And it was just like, woo! And I just never wanted that to end. And then guess what? One day it just stopped. And there was a lot of heartache as that transitioned. But it was important for me to know that the next stage was not ecstasy, but the next stage was unity. And that unity had a void quality to it, a nothingness to it. And so there was a recognition, that the only constant is change. And that as much as I would like to be the same and implement the same things over and over and over and always get a result, I mean, let's be honest, the three of us are men, and all we have to do is look at our relationship with women, or if we're gay, with our partner, and we start to see like, oh wow, like I found the one way to turn my partner on. Now I do that over and over and over, but eventually it stops turning my partner on. Well, guess what? It's the same thing for us. Like I found the one way to experience this successful result. I do it over and over and over, and then it runs out of juice. It stops working. And that's just the nature. That's just the nature of we are evolving. Consciousness is evolving. Humans are evolving, and we're evolving rapidly right now. It's freaking a lot of people out, but we are evolving, and destruction is the beginning of creation. So you cannot create anything without destroying something. Destruction and creation are the same thing. So when things start to fall apart, you want to start to get excited. When things stop working, you want to get excited because now something new is emerging. And the emergence is through the rearranging. Creativity is taking what is there and rearranging it in a new way, which means I took what was there and I destroyed it and I made it into something new.
Love it.
Be in a state of acceptance. Practice total and complete acceptance of yourself, of all situations and all people at all times. And as you do that, you don't put your head in the sand. You are at peace with that every human being innately thinks they're right about everything. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's a phenomenal survival strategy. There's nothing to resist.
What is that? What is that from Esther? The law of allowing.
Exactly right. The law of allowing. I want you to know I'm standing on the shoulders of my mentors in so many ways, other than maybe the hidden motives. I think the hidden motives is to survive. That's something I've never seen in any other training, literature, coaching, support. But other than that, I would say that I'm just a shortcut to the library of what works.
Sounds good to me. Well, yeah.
I know that we are coming up on time here. Now, I want to get down to our dreaded question. Is there anything that you would hope to talk about today that we haven't gotten to?
I think you guys are nailing it. I think probably if we just go to like the most fundamental thing about a quiet mind, I think that I would say it like this, that really a quiet mind is essentially a mind that's in the present moment. And it means that you're free from stress, worry, and concern. And that's a big deal because according to the American Institute of Stress, 73% of Americans say they deal with psychological stress on a regular basis. And you and I, we all know, like in 2020, when those results come out, it's probably going to be like 95%. Who knows? But it's definitely gone up. And that's bad news because you make bad decisions when you're stressed. You don't see things clearly. You're not easy to be around. You're a pain. Your creativity is diminished. Your energy is zapped. And if you're going to achieve your goals and create what I like to call an epic life, well, then you want the best version of you to influence every aspect of your life. And the good news is you can learn to quiet your mind. And when you do, all of those debilitating effects begin to disappear. And you get that stressed out survival mode out of your system. And anybody can learn how to develop a quiet mind.
Well, Matthew, Thank you so much for being here. Where do you hang out most on the web? Where do you want people to find you?
Best place to find me is probably on my website, MatthewFerry.com, MatthewFerry.com. And you can also download my app. So I'm sort of updating my blog on a pretty regular basis, and I'm updating the webinars that we do in my app, and then I have a bunch of free resources there for them. And the app name is just my name, Matthew Ferry.
Great. Well, we'll have links to that stuff in the show notes, and thank you again. I think this is a great hour well spent, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Rock and roll. Let's do it.
Take care, sir.
Hey, thanks for listening. Show notes and more at jkwdpodcast.com. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share with your friends, and we will see you next week. Bye. A Better Humanhood production.